World number one, Jannik Sinner, has been banned for 3 months for doping.
Question marks surrounding his reputation.
I am pretty sure that there are a lot of things we don't know.
His case was cleared.
Right now, in March 2026, the BNP Paribas Open is about to settle an argument that's been building quietly behind the scenes for months. Jannik Sinner walks into Indian Wells as the world number one, sitting on an 11,330-point ATP ranking cushion that looks absolutely unassailable on paper. The stats scream his dominance. The betting markets, however, are telling a completely different story. Both Sinner and Alcaraz have been priced virtually identically by sportsbooks to win this tournament, suggesting the ranking gap means very little once the matches actually start. But here's what those clean numbers refuse to show you. In 2023, Sinner marched confidently into the Indian Wells semi-finals, and Alcaraz sent him straight home. He returned in 2024, deeper, hungrier, and more dangerous than before, and the result was identical. At Indian Wells specifically, Sinner has yet to defeat Alcaraz in any of their semi-final encounters at this venue. Tennis experts aren't quietly whispering about this anymore. The consensus has shifted into something far sharper.
It's maybe contract, maybe some other stuff.
Maybe Carlos's dad and Juan Carlos had a different vision. Some people think maybe they couldn't get a contract together.
This shifts everything for Carlos.
Yes, I do have more doubts that I can win slams, particularly against these two guys. But at the same time, I know that while I'm still active and when I enter on the court, I don't care who is across the net. I always believe I'm better and I believe that I deserve to win, and I'm going to do everything I can do to win.
Alcaraz is now ahead of Sinner by car lengths, and Indian Wells 2026 is precisely where that verdict will prove it. If this is the kind of perspective nobody else is giving you, hit subscribe because we're just getting started. So Indian Wells has a brutal way of separating genuine dominance from flattering statistics. And to understand why Indian Wells 2026 is so loaded with meaning, you first need to understand what Sinner's world number one ranking is actually hiding.
I'm really annoyed that Sinner's not an American. I mean, it's like a German guy, an Austrian. Learn to speak German. He lives there at a ski. Shouldn't he have grown up in L.A.?
I don't know. You know what? I think we can all just be happy that Spain finally has a good male tennis player, right? Thank God they waited hours.
The ATP ranking system rewards consistency across a 52-week rolling window. Sinner's 11,330-point lead looks enormous because he's been extraordinarily consistent. He won the Australian Open in January 2025, collected Masters titles throughout the year, and barely dropped points anywhere on the calendar. That's not fiction. That's genuinely elite-level tennis sustained over a long stretch. His supporters aren't wrong to point at those numbers, but the ATP ranking system measures breadth of performance across an entire season. It doesn't measure who is actually playing better tennis right now, in this specific moment, heading into this specific tournament. Those are two fundamentally different questions, and the tennis world has started confusing one for the other when talking about the Sinner versus Alcaraz debate. Here's where the picture gets genuinely complicated for Sinner. His 2026 season leading into Indian Wells has been solid, but it hasn't been explosive. He reached the final of the Australian Open 2026, but was unable to claim the title. He's been winning matches, staying sharp, and protecting his ranking effectively. Meanwhile, Alcaraz arrived at Indian Wells off the back of a 2026 season where his form has been visibly sharper, more aggressive, and frankly more dangerous on hard court. The experts watching the technical quality of both players' recent matches, not just their results, are seeing something the scoreboard hasn't fully reflected yet. Alcaraz's ball striking, his variety, his physical intensity in 2026 has climbed to a level that's drawing serious attention from people who analyze this sport professionally.
You bet 50-50 on them. Who's the best? For me now, Carlos just feels...
Clearly, we've never seen a more explosive tennis player ever than Alcaraz, right? As athletes evolve, is it possible that someone in 15 years' time can be even more athletic than Alcaraz? Or is he at the very, very top? I don't see how it's possible. But you said that 15, 20 years ago as well.
Yeah, you said that with Rafa too, right?
I don't see how it's possible.
Exactly. But his just pure explosion, his fast twitch, I would put up with any athlete in the world, period. It's just ridiculous.
That's the foundation of the by car lengths argument. It's not about rankings, it's about what's actually happening on court right now. To appreciate why Indian Wells specifically matters in this conversation, you need to look at what this tournament has consistently revealed about both players. In 2023, Sinner was a rising force. He reached the semifinals at Indian Wells, which was genuinely impressive for someone still building his Grand Slam resume at that point. Alcaraz met him there and dismantled him, 7-6, 6-3, in a match that was far less competitive than the scoreline suggested. That result was easier to explain away at the time. Alcaraz was a proven Indian Wells champion. Having won the title previously, he knew these conditions intimately, and Sinner was still finding his footing at the very top level.
Multiple slams the last couple of years, #1 in the world, has another opportunity to do something in the game of tennis in Australia by completing the career Grand Slam, as the youngest person to ever do it. So I just think it's weird timing. So I don't know what has happened recently, if they had something big that blew up between them and a disagreement, either financially or family-wise or on court just in general. I didn't see this coming.
Fair enough. Then came 2024. Sinner arrived having won the Australian Open in January of that year and would go on to claim the US Open later in 2024, a Grand Slam champion, a proven match winner at the highest level. His serve had improved significantly, his backhand had become one of the most reliable weapons in the game, and his fitness was being described by coaches around the tour as essentially flawless. He arrived at Indian Wells in 2024 as a genuine title contender. Not a hopeful, not a dark horse, but an actual favorite. He reached the semifinals again. Alcaraz was waiting again. The result was the same. What makes that 2024 loss particularly significant isn't just that it happened, it's how it happened. Alcaraz controlled the tempo of that match in a way that didn't leave Sinner many clean answers. Sinner's baseline game, which destroys almost everyone else on tour, ran into a player who was willing to disrupt the rhythm at every possible opportunity. Alcaraz's ability to change pace, attack short balls with aggression, and play through pressure moments without tightening up gave him a structural edge that Sinner's flat, high-tempo game struggled to counteract.
Can anyone beat Carlos Alcaraz? Just too good.
Maybe even catch Djokovic.
I was in the preseason, and some videos came up with the movement. So I didn't, to be honest, I didn't aware that it was really similar to knowledge serve. So
he's on a legendary career already.
I think Alcaraz definitely got room for improvement.
It feels like we had seen the end of that kind of Carlos Alcaraz.
They're going to look at Carlos and what he does and how he loves to be aggressive and move forward, because we lost a lot of that.
Alcaraz, I'm sorry, but this guy's amazing.
You're talking about a phenom.
2 semifinals, 2 losses. In 2023, Sinner couldn't take a single set off Alcaraz. In 2024, the story was no different. Alcaraz again prevailed. He dropped the opening set to Sinner but responded with ruthless efficiency, taking the next 2 to advance. Indian Wells has been speaking clearly. Whether Sinner's camp has been listening is a different question entirely. The by-car lengths claim from tennis analysts doesn't come from nowhere. There's a specific technical argument underpinning it, and it deserves a proper breakdown. Alcaraz's forehand is currently operating at a level that has no obvious ceiling in the modern game. The combination of topspin, pace, and disguise he generates from that wing, particularly on hard court where the ball sits up slightly more than on clay, gives him an offensive weapon that Sinner's predominantly flat ball striking struggles to neutralize from behind the baseline. Sinner prefers to engage in high-pace flat exchanges where his footwork and anticipation give him the edge. Alcaraz refuses to play that game. He varies the pace aggressively, drags Sinner wide, and then attacks the open court before the Italian can reset. It's a tactical blueprint that has worked consistently. Beyond the forehand, Alcaraz's serve has taken a meaningful step forward in 2025 and into 2026, becoming more consistent and more threatening at critical junctures. Earlier in his career, his serve was considered the most exploitable part of his game relative to his elite status. That vulnerability has noticeably closed. He's winning free points on serve in situations where previously he'd need to manufacture the point from the baseline. That development alone has made him measurably harder to beat in tight finals and deep draws.
This guy, Carlos Alcaraz, in my opinion, is the most talented 2021-22 that I've ever seen on the tennis court. That's more than Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, who I have great respect.
I think he's playing like Federer.
It's the biggest victory of his career for sure.
No, I'm hungry.
If player and coach aren't getting along, that's what happens.
Carlos is on a pace to become the best of all time.
Sinner's game, for all its brilliance, operates within a somewhat narrower stylistic range. His strength is relentlessness, the quality of his defense, the depth of his returns, the consistency of his ground strokes under sustained pressure. Against almost everyone on tour, that approach is essentially unbeatable. But Alcaraz represents the rare stylistic matchup problem that Sinner's game hasn't found clean solutions for yet. Sinner knows this, his coaching team knows this, and the analysts who've spent months watching match footage from both players in 2025 and early 2026 have reached a fairly settled conclusion about where the gap currently sits. There's a layer to this story that statistics don't capture particularly well, and that's the psychological weight building around Sinner every time he walks into the Indian Wells draw. At some point, repeated losses to the same opponent at the same tournament stop being tactical problems and start becoming something harder to shake. Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal understood this intimately. Certain venues, certain surfaces, certain opponents carry psychological freight that even the most mentally disciplined athletes feel. Sinner is an exceptionally composed competitor. His ability to stay calm under pressure is one of the genuine strengths that carried him to the world #1 ranking. But composure and complete freedom from psychological pressure are different things. Heading into Indian Wells 2026, Sinner is carrying the weight of 2 consecutive semi-final exits at the hands of the same opponent. The betting markets have looked at his world #1 ranking and his 11,330-point cushion and still priced Alcaraz as an equally viable title threat. That's a statement. The market is essentially saying that Sinner's ranking superiority and Alcaraz's Indian Wells superiority cancel each other out. And if you had to pick one of those two factors to carry more weight in the specific context of this tournament, Sinner's general ATP dominance or Alcaraz's specific dominance at this venue, the historical evidence comes down clearly on one side. Alcaraz, for his part, arrives at Indian Wells in 2026 without the psychological baggage. He has won this title before, twice in 2023 and 2024, and both times, Sinner was the man he eliminated in the semifinals to get there. Indian Wells is comfortable territory for him, and that comfort, however intangible it seems when written on a page, translates into real competitive advantage when the matches get tight in the third set. The experts who've been building the by-car lengths argument aren't claiming Sinner is finished or that his world #1 status is fraudulent. That's not the point being made. The point is more specific and more interesting than that. The argument is that in terms of raw tennis quality, technical sharpness, tactical sophistication, physical athleticism, and competitive edge in the biggest matches, Alcaraz has opened a gap in 2025 and into 2026 that the ATP ranking system hasn't caught up with yet. Rankings are a rear-view mirror. They tell you what happened over the last 12 months. Form is a windshield. It tells you what's coming. Indian Wells 2026 is the moment where the rearview mirror and the windshield meet. If Sinner goes deep in this draw, beats the top 10 opponents in his path convincingly, and handles Alcaraz if they meet, the by-car lengths verdict gets torn apart, and the analysts who built it will have serious questions to answer. The ranking table will have proved itself an accurate reflection of reality. But if Alcaraz dominates this fortnight in the way his 2026 form suggests he's capable of doing, if the semi-final pattern at this venue holds, if the technical and tactical superiority that analysts have been quietly documenting becomes visible to every fan watching, then Indian Wells 2026 becomes the moment the conversation shifted permanently. The stats screamed Sinner's dominance at the start of this video. The betting markets pushed back. The head-to-head at this specific venue pushed back harder. And the technical analysts who study this sport at its most granular level have pushed back hardest of all. Right now, in March 2026, the court at Indian Wells is the only place left where this argument can actually be settled. Indian Wells doesn't lie. It never has. That's the full picture. The ranking data, the head-to-head record, the technical breakdown, and the psychological weight all pointing in the same direction. Whether you're in the Sinner camp or fully convinced that Alcaraz has already pulled ahead by car lengths, Indian Wells 2026 is about to give us an answer that's impossible to argue with. If this kind of deep, honest tennis analysis is something you want more of, the kind that doesn't just repeat the obvious narrative but actually digs into what's driving these results, then subscribe to this channel right now. Drop your prediction in the comments below. Does Sinner finally break through at Indian Wells? Or does Alcaraz prove the experts right and pull further ahead? The conversation down there is going to be worth reading. We'll see you in the next one.